Ever wonder why loops are such a big deal in programming? Well, loops are like the unsung heroes of the programming world. They play a vital role in making our codes efficient and our lives as programmers a whole lot easier. Let's think of loops as the workhorses of programming. They allow us to perform repetitive tasks with minimal code. Imagine having to write 100 lines of code to print numbers from 1 to 100. Sounds tedious, right? But with loops we can accomplish this task with just a few lines of code. Loops are also incredibly versatile. They can be used in a range of tasks, from traversing through arrays, to manipulating data, to controlling the flow of the program. So, loops are clearly an essential part of programming, but how do they work in Java? Stay tuned as we delve into the concept of loops in Java in our next scene. Java, like many other languages, utilizes loops to manage repetitive tasks. This is a fundamental concept in programming, allowing us to execute a block of code multiple times, saving us from writing the same lines over and over again. In Java, there are three main types of loops that we commonly use: the for loop, the while loop, and the do-while loop. First, let's talk about the for loop. Think of it like a well-planned journey. Before you start, you know exactly how many steps you're going to take. This loop is perfect when you know in advance how many times you want to repeat a block of code. It has a clear beginning, middle, and end point. Next, we have the while loop. It's similar to going on a hike without a set path. You keep going as long as a certain condition holds true. You might not know how many iterations you'll go through, and that's okay. The while loop will keep running until the condition is no longer met. Finally, there's the do-while loop. It's like the while loop's adventurous cousin. It will always run at least once, regardless of the condition. It's like diving into a pool before checking the temperature. You're committed to that first dive, but after that you'll only continue if the water's warm enough. Each of these loops has its unique use cases, strengths, and weaknesses. The for loop is great when you have a known number of iterations, the while loop is excellent when you have an unknown number of iterations, and the do-while loop is ideal when you need to ensure at least one execution of the loop. It's also worth noting that these loops can be nested within each other, offering even greater flexibility for complex tasks. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to loops in Java. Now that we know the types of loops in Java, let's dig a bit deeper. Understanding these loops and when to use them can make your programming journey smoother and more efficient. So let's continue exploring these loops in the upcoming scenes. The for loop in Java is a powerful tool for managing repetition. Let's dive into the magic of the for loop. It's made up of three parts: initialization, condition, and increment or decrement. We start with initialization, where we give our loop variable an initial value. Next is the condition, which is the limit to how many times the loop will run. Lastly, we have the increment or decrement that changes the loop variable's value each time the loop runs. Imagine you're baking cookies and need to add 5 cups of flour. Instead of counting each cup individually, you can use a for loop. You'd initialize your loop variable to 1, set your condition to 5, and increment by 1 each time a cup of flour is added. The for loop will keep adding flour until you've reached 5 cups. That's the for loop for you. But what about the while loop? While loops in Java are another way to control repetitive tasks. They're like the for loop's cousin, sharing a similar purpose but with a little different approach. Imagine you're waiting for a pot of water to boil. You'd keep checking until it's ready, right? That's essentially how a while loop works. It continues to execute a block of code as long as its condition remains true. The structure of a while loop is fairly simple. It begins with the keyword while, followed by a condition in parentheses. The block of code to be repeated is enclosed in braces. Let's say we have a counter set to 1 and we want to count up to 10. Our condition would be while counter is less than or equal to 10. Inside the loop, we'd increment the counter by 1 each time the loop runs. The loop keeps going, incrementing the counter until the counter is no longer less than or equal to 10. At that point, the condition is false, and the loop stops. This way, while loops give us a lot of control. They're great for when we don't know exactly how many times we'll need to loop, like when we're waiting for that pot of water to boil. It's not about a fixed number of times, it's about a condition being met. And that's the while loop. Lastly, let's look at the do-while loop. Finally, we have the do-while loop in Java. This loop functions somewhat differently from its for and while counterparts. The key difference lies in the sequence of execution. In a do-while loop, the loop body is executed at least once before the condition is checked. This ensures that the loop executes at least once, even if the condition is false from the get-go. Let's consider a simple example. Suppose we have a program that needs to print a statement, "Hello world," at least once. A do-while loop would be a perfect fit for this. We would start by writing the do keyword followed by the action, which is printing "Hello world." Then we would write while, followed by the condition that would end the loop. This unique structure of the do-while loop gives it a special place in our programming toolbox, and that concludes our exploration of loops in Java. So, we've taken a journey through the world of loops in Java. We've discovered how loops, a fundamental concept in programming, make repetitive tasks manageable. We've explored the intricacies of the 3 types of loops in Java: for, while, and do-while loops, each with its own unique application and functionality. This knowledge is essential not just for Java but for programming as a whole. Remember, mastering loops is a crucial step to becoming a proficient Java programmer. Keep practicing and you'll